Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Datastorage.com, where we break down where the infrastructure industry is going as it changes into this AI landscape. And today we've got a very special guest with us, Abhishek Jha from Elucidata. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Thanks for giving us this opportunity to share our story. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And you are the CEO of Elucidata and also the founder, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Very cool. And, I did notice recently that the company has basically rebranded towards the AI, Elucidata AI, and wanted to kind of get your feedback on how that transition took place and what it means for your brand.
No, that's a great question, and that's something that we think a lot about. And there's an interesting story that I would like to share. So if I go back in 2018, when we did our first seed round, we were very excited to close the round. We were very excited to onboard our new investors, our first institutional investors. And, as it is often the case, you had a press release coming up to announce that, right? And our investors have been great partners for us. They were insisting on using the word AI or the phrase AI in that press release, right? And if you look at that press release, I did not use that. That's also a reflection of the fact that at the time, we did not have a conviction that AI as a tool, right? It was clearly a very active area of research in academia, also, to some extent in industry. But we had not built our own conviction that this is a tool that can help drug discovery, right? And that was reflected in the press release, right? It's a very symbolic, very one would argue a cosmetic thing, but I think it's a pretty remarkable thing that we did not use that, right? Now, fast forward 7 years later, we are actively, as you picked up, repositioning ourselves. That's I would attribute that to at least two things. One, times have changed. We are in a post-LLM era, right? And this has been one of those, technological advancement that has captured the imagination of the world in ways very few things can. Like, maybe internet was the most recent example that comes to mind, maybe smartphones. But it's pretty profound, right? It will impact us. So we cannot be blind or deaf to that, right? That's an external factor. Internally, I think we have also built our own conviction around how AI can be very impactful for drug discovery at large, and that's what excites me, right? That's the story I want to share today, right? Where what we have seen, if you look at any valuable biotech company out there, right, that is based on one rare discovery, a very unique insight, right, a biological insight about a group of patients not responding to a drug, or about a group of humans that have a disease, right? There's always some unusual thing, right, which in some ways does not match a pattern, right? And the traditional AI tools stack that has been developed has been very, very good at matching patterns, right? Like, and that we benefit from. Let's say you are trying to find a movie on Netflix, right? But in biology, and there are a lot of other industries where you are trying to predict problems which are in the machine learning language out of distribution. Matching pattern, not, right? And I think that requires a complete rethink of how traditional AI has helped and created value to address these out of distribution problems. And it's not a monolithic problem. Even detecting it, right, is a very valuable thing. And it's a rare event. And the outcome could be something very benign or funny. Like, I don't know if you've seen this video on YouTube where someone is asking ChatGPT to make a glass full of wine. And ChatGPT cannot because it has never seen that in its training data set, right? So that's funny. But if your self-driving car does not detect that out of distribution, something that it has not been trained on, it could be quite consequential, like be fatal, right? And healthcare and life sciences is one such industry, right, where you have to have a very good handle on identifying those out of distribution problems, right? And that requires a complete rethink, a complete shift of how traditional AI approaches have worked. Which brings us to our data-centric AI approach, right? And that's a conviction that we've built over the years now, and that's what you're seeing on our website, on our messages, on our how we are positioning ourselves as an AI company in drug discovery, focused on detecting solving out of distribution problems, right? So both of those things have led us to what we have observed, and I'm glad you have observed, because we are spending a lot of time and money to make that message clear in the market.
Yeah, it's an exciting story and transition. I think that the question that a lot of people want to know is, are you focused on a specific vertical, or, like, where are you guys geared at solving problems?
So yes, at this point of time, yes, we are focused on a specific vertical. That vertical is pharma. It's a subset of healthcare at large, right? So our customers are therapeutics companies that are making drug products. Our customers are diagnostic companies that are making a diagnostic product, right? Our companies are also tech bio companies that are making tools to serve therapeutics and diagnostic companies. That is the vertical that we're focused on. That's our sole focus today. But the out of distribution problem that I'm talking about has a long tail of very valuable problems. I give you an example of self-driving car, right? But there are such novel insights that also build value in a hedge fund, or when you're trying to detect a manufacturing defect in your aluminum sheets that your factory is making, right? That's a rare event that you want to be able to detect there, right? And again, traditional AI approaches will break down. They are not suited to handle such problems for a variety of reasons. We can get into that. That's a whole range of what I would call long tail problems, very valuable problems. But today we are focused on only one vertical, which is pharma.
Great. And for pharma, what are the different types of data that companies in the pharma industry kind of bring into your platform and like to, which create quality or governance or other, exercise? What type of data are they typically working with?
It's a great question. So you can, as much as we are talking about one vertical, pharma is not a monolith, right? It has different segments, sub-segments, if you will, right, which are struggling with their own data types and problems. But if we step back and abstract it out, there are different modalities that we support, right? And that's how we have thought about our platform as well. So text data is a very popular one, like PDFs, papers, patents, lab notebooks. Then you have tabular data, which is again a huge source of data. Genomics is a more popular one that has made it to the mainstream, right? Human Genome Project with 23andMe and such. But it's not the only one. There are many such, tabular data that are used routinely on a daily basis. Then you have imaging data, right? Something that you're more familiar with because, when we go to a doctor, you have some kind of imaging done sometimes, X-ray, MRI, CT scan, whatnot. These are the three modalities that cover most of it. But there are very important data modalities like audio and video that are also becoming part of the play. Right now, we do not support that, but you will hear us talk about that in few quarters from now. But today, there are three modalities that we support, which also aligns with what our market uses: text data, tabular data, and imaging data.
Yeah, I think that's also why you guys can be unique. I mean, I think what we're seeing in the AI landscape is that a lot of companies are getting really, advanced in the text modeling, but when it comes to multimodal models, in the first or the second inning, right? I asked that question to a lot of the people that we speak to, and it seems like the common answer is, we're first inning, we're in the second inning, right? And so to have a platform that lets you bring in those different modals to expand
Indeed.
the outcomes that your AI can create, it's pretty exciting. One question I've heard a lot is, are you guys providing any type of data unification, data normalization, matching, merging, like guys doing governance behind the software as well?
Yes, we do, and it's again, the problem statement is how do you get a handle on out of distribution, those rare, valuable insights, right? That's the problem statement, and as to how, that's data-centric AI, right? And there are many aspects of that how. One of them, a key component, is making sure that the quality of data is appropriate for the downstream activities, for the downstream use case, right? And that means extracting data from PDFs, unwieldy PDFs. That means normalizing that, putting onto an ontology. That means putting that on a unified data model, right, where you can integrate different modalities. That also means governance and observability, right, where appropriate controls are in place to make sure that the data does not leak, not just for the model, but also for the personnel in the company, right? Because we often handle quite sensitive data. Uh, and it's easy to say that, oh, your data will not be shared with other customers. That's of course the case. But even within a organization, right, there are different role-based access controls that we have in place. So, John, yes, our platform does offer those things. But I think what is really 10x better for us is that we can give very high quality data products at a scale that is not available in the market otherwise. Right? The aspects of governance and there are other platforms that do that as well, and we do it too, just to give a full stack solution to our customers. But is 10x better about us is the focus on the quality of data. That's what makes us who we are. Yeah.
You mentioned data products. Can we dig in there? Do you have, your own proprietary data sets that can, let's call it, enrich a customer's data? Is that what you're talking about?
No, so it's a great question, right? Data product is again one of those words that we have been, using it quite a lot, but it does not. Today, we do not have any proprietary data on our platform, right? What we mean by data products, we take for any given use case, we take multimodal data that is relevant to support that use case. It could be any combination of text, table, tabular, and imaging data, and turn that corpus, and only that corpus, not the whole, vast corpus of data that is out there within your organization and outside, but take only that relevant corpus and turn that into a secure, compliant, AI ready data product. That's what we call a data product. And this has to be very high quality data product with which you can do it over and over again. Because one of the things that we learned early on, right, around 5 years back when we started on this journey, is we took an approach that was, I think, a mile wide and inch deep, where we said, like a lot of other organizations did at the time, that we'll take all the data that is out there, we'll clean it all up, get it all AI ready, right? And we did spend many quarters trying to do that. We did make progress, but it was just not giving a good enough ROI for our customers. And the reason was one of the points that you made earlier, John, that the unifying data model, right, was too rigid to support multiple use cases to multiple stakeholders. That was just not going to happen. So even when we had curated the data, we had to go back and clean up the data again for that use case. Right? Same data was getting cleaned up again, even in some cases for the same customer. That spoke to us, right? And it was not clear on the day, but over a period of time, it became quite clear that, hey, look, the use case is the driving variable here. That's the main factor, right? So we start with the use case and go and find all the data in public domain or within your premises that can support the use case, and take only that corpus and turn that into a very high quality data product. If you buy this thesis, which we certainly do, then the way you build your tech stack, the way you build your processes, the way you build your team is very different than the earlier approach, right? So this is a very, I think, contrarian approach. I don't seek consensus here, but that's our lesson. That's what we have learned, and that's what we are trying to deploy and bring it to the market, right?
That makes a lot of sense. So it's like starting with the use case in mind, could be
Yes.
departmental use cases, and working your way back through those use cases to clean data sets that
Right.
literally could be the data could be the same starting product
Yep.
with a completely different end product that supports specific outcomes. And once the data is ready for that outcome, are you finding, well, first, are you enabling your customers to use that clean data to interact with foundation models that have APIs, or
Yep.
to use that data to, let's call it, train their own LLM or fine tune an open source model? Like, once your customers get their data prepared, how do you kind of enable them to use it?
That's a great question, John. And again, we are seeing a very interesting, as we speak right now in real time, a change in behavior. And we right now we support all different kinds of ways in which you want to consume data, and they fall in like few particular patterns. One is your like, hey, make me a dashboard, right? Like populate a dashboard. That's quite old school, still valuable, still very you don't have to be at the whims of agents, AI agents, but that's one outcome. The other is like, hey, feed me. We are training our own model. Let's feed into there, right? So we don't need a dashboard. It's a programmatic access through APIs. We do that. That's a model we support. And third, main one, which is new but very exciting, is hey, I just want to talk to my data in plain natural language, right, in English, and that's something that we support as well today. And I was just talking to someone earlier this morning where when we started on this, which was not long time back, earlier this year, where we said we would take this corpus of clean data or data products, right? And one of the data products is a knowledge graph. That's what we have built with for some use cases that we're supporting. Can we connect the knowledge graph, which is based on very high quality data, to a LLM of choice? And we thought it would be like straightforward, plug and play. It's not. It's just not, right? If you want to deliver on the quality of responses from the agents, it's a highly non-trivial problem. Engineering problems like latency, right? Do you get a response fast enough? Context challenges like, hey, I typed a big prompt. Can the agents ask me questions back, right? To clarify that. That requires a lot of depth and domain understanding to do that. And then finally, the quality of response, right? Because our audience have a very high bar when it comes to quality. They'll judge you very harshly if you don't capitalize, some words. So the bar of quality is very, very high. And how do you make sure that your agents are performing at that level all the time, right? But it's a very interesting direction that we are seeing shift in. One of our customers where we have deployed this AI solution, there are around 45 queries being run on a daily basis with a very small team of 5 scientists. And that's quite exciting for us, right? It's not working perfectly, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, an exciting step.
Yeah, in your industry, I think it's highly regulated first and foremost. Can't forget the regulation. If you make a mistake, you could harm somebody, right? Prescribe the wrong antibiotic or whatever the case may be. So there is a very low threshold outside of whether you're capitalizing a letter, but a very high threshold for you cannot make mistakes with this data. First, I think that's an amazing place to start if you're going to shift into other industries, because you're starting with the bar way up here and into a different vertical. You may be able to meet the standards down here, but starting up there, what are some of the things that you say should be automated when you're dealing with this data and shouldn't be automated with this data? And how do you guys kind of enable both the automated side of it and the personal side of it maybe at the same time?
Great question, John. I'll go back to my earlier comment about our core thesis of really attacking out of distribution problems, right? And in some cases, the outcome could be very benign, very funny, where you can chuckle. If you're trying to find a very special indie documentary on Netflix, maybe you get that on the third page, you complain, you moan, you shrug, you move on, right? But for our industry, that's just not acceptable. Like it can be fatal, right? And we are, so you're right. The bar is quite high. The consequences are quite profound. But there are other industries too where a lot rides on such out of distribution problems, like a hedge fund, a self-driving car, right? There are a lot of such problems, right? In that sense, it's not unique, but there's a whole set of high-value, rare events that you want to get a very good handle on predicting, right? In terms of, I think, what can be automated and what cannot be automated, I think we have taken a very clear stance on that we want to die on the hill of quality. So to deliver on the promise of quality, at least for our solutions, we strongly believe that a human expert has to be in the loop, right? So the way it is working for us, most valuable, most strong ROI solutions are where a human learns from the AI and AI learns from the human. So that back and forth is a continuous process, right? Now, it's possible, the pace of evolution has been so dramatic and so overwhelming, right? In 2030, we may be beyond that. Today, we are not, right? So I strongly believe that in 2030, all that we are doing right now will look very archaic and very primitive. But today, I think there's a real value in how you have human experts interact with AI to solve a problem. That I think is a winning recipe. Right? That's something that we have not templatized, but we have a pretty good handle on that. Right? And that's when we see real aha moments from our customers, from our own delivery team continuously.
It's exciting. It kind of speaks to that. Hey, AI is not here to replace the worker, it's here to enable the worker. We like to promote that side of things because that's where we envision, this market going. Let's kind of switch gears here a little bit. I see you as a CEO who's a great business person and a great leader. So you are also technical, right? In this podcast here, Data-Storage.com, really want to kind of pull some tidbits out about where is the market in your mind going? Sure, when you started Elucidata back in, I think, 2015 or something like that, you probably got an email from a hyperscaler and they said, hey, we want to give you a couple $100,000 worth of credits to build your application on our stack. And ultimately what we see with when you go from startup to seed to series A, B, C, and all experience that growth is that, especially if you're hosting video data and audio data and image data, that can really stack up quickly. And so, like, maybe you can give us some background on what were the key decisions that you made early on in setting up the infrastructure for the technology and how those decisions potentially impacted, the cost of maintaining a software like this?
Yeah. No, John, again, this will cover maybe 2 episodes or more of your. This is loaded, like a lot of questions here, right? A lot to unpack. But this is what we are living, right? And I think as much as for any one who's listening to this, the pace is overwhelming, right? And you have to keep up with. So there has to be some true north which you want to rely on to navigate this landscape. And we often go back to very first principles. Like I'm a scientist, I've trained for first 30 years of my life, getting really deep into very technical stuff. But if I can borrow some of the lessons, some abstractions out of all of those problems that I worked on as a scientist, right? You have to go back to very basic first principles, right? For example, put your market first, not your investors, because as much as we need investors, and we do, and they have been insanely helpful, but we are here and they are here to support us because we are trying to bring value to the market, right? So put them first, and they may like something, they may not like something. Listen to that. Your customers tell you a lot, right? They give you a chance. So what is valuable there, what is not, right? What are the real? Where do things get stuck, right? So being a very good listener, trying to approach that from very basic first principles, that has helped us a lot. Our how we ship out things has changed completely. Building a software is quite different than building an AI product. Same individuals can do that, but the process is quite different. And we have seen this where some of the products that we're shipping out is just not production ready even after months because the quality threshold is not met because we followed a old school. By old school, I mean what we were doing, last year. And the approach that we have taken for new MVPs that we have rolled out, right, is very different. And you have to handle for the non-deterministic nature of AI agents, right? Those things in the context of the quality that we're promising is a very hard problem to solve, right? And there's no tool that can solve that. So processes, team, they have to know and understand that, right? This is just one example of how things have changed dramatically, right? And I think we're doing well. We have been growing quite nicely for the last 6 quarters consecutively. So we're doing some things right in terms of understanding our market, what they're asking for, delivering on that continuously over and over again. And at the end of the day, there's some very basic things. There's nothing magical. You have to just execute on those things really, really well. I know it sounds very trite and cliched, but that's what it is. You just have to put one foot at a time and do it really well every day, just a little better the next day.
Yeah. Again, back to regulations as well. Nice to be able to choose just any infrastructure provider or software provider to develop your solution on, but I'm sure you guys are held to very high security and certification standards. Maybe you can dig into some of the certifications and security that you guys have in place to make sure that you can help companies with such highly secure data.
Yeah, that's one of the first questions that we get, right? Hey, is my data secure with you? And we have to assure our market that yes, it is, right? It's as important for us than as it is for them, right? We will be out of business if we don't. The good news is that, a lot of these things have become a vertical in itself, where you have vendors who can make sure that you're HIPAA compliant, make sure you have SOC 2, right? That industry has grown in the last 10 years, quite matured quite nicely, but we rely heavily on them to make sure our platform is GDPR compliant, HIPAA compliant, SOC 2 compliant, different ISO compliance. But part of that is also messaging it actively, right? Where on our slides, on our, we have white papers to share with our customers to assure that the queries that you are going to ask, the data that you're going to use, will be available only to you, and not even your whole organization, right? When some individuals within your organization, as you decide, right? So you have complete control and governance and transparency on such issues. But regulatory burden is high and significant, and I know that has always been discussed as a negative thing, but there's some good reasons why it should be the case, right? And it's a given. You have to solve around it, right? It's not something to work around, right? You have to deal with it, and there are some burdens like that in other industries too, right? But pharma has a significant burden. It's a addressable problem, both in terms of technically and contractually. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that brings up another question. For those customers who want to deploy in their own cloud or on-prem, do you guys have the option to be portable and allow them to deploy your solution in their own environment?
Yeah, we did that just this week, where we got the first response from our customers that, hey, the quality of our, so the tool that we deployed. So the short answer is yes, John. We support all the major cloud providers: GCP, AWS, and Snowflake, Databricks. Like we are integrated, and our solutions can be deployed on any of them on your prem. We have said no to non-cloud prem solution. That's something that we don't want to sign up for. But if it's your AWS account, if it's your GCP, we will deploy. We just did this last week, where we got some good response from our customers after the first deployment. Right, the first hand-holding of onboarding session was done. They tried the tool in their own hands with on their own documents, which have sensitive information, personal health information of patients, which we don't know and cannot see, but they were able to run those documents and extract information from those documents with very high quality, right? So yes, short answer is yes, we do that continuously, and that's one of the first questions that our customers ask. And in some cases we do recommend that, hey, it does not make sense to do that on day one. First, why don't you see value of this tool? And if yes, then we'll deploy it on your infra. But in some cases, it's non-negotiable on day one, right? If it has some very sensitive proprietary information, let's say from your manufacturing teams of your batch records or antibody that you have designed, that's your IP. You don't want that to leave your premises. Or you're dealing with diagnostic reports with personal health information. In that case, on day one, we have solutions deployed on their infra. In some cases, it does not make sense, and you can do that 6 months later.
Yep. That kind of brings up another question about, if you're helping companies kind of bring all this data together and kind of customize it so that it can be utilized for specific outcomes, how are you impacting their data storage requirements? Do you typically see that a client that uses you ends up storing more data, or you help them consolidate and store less data?
So it's a very interesting and funny question, right? Because it is the storage. We don't know what is the total storage, right, across the enterprise. We don't know, and I would challenge that they don't know that either, right? Like one of my friends was working at Amgen, and his job for at least 9 months was to understand how much they pay AWS across the enterprise, right? He could not figure it out. He could not get an answer. So we certainly don't know how much. So I cannot tell you what fraction of our enterprise data, our customers' enterprise data, is on our platform, except for very small companies where we have a good handle on that. Then we know, like, it's around 80-90%. But a very interesting pattern that we see for data that is on our platform, we see repeat downloads of that structured, clean data, and we see that, like, that data is being reused over and over again, right? For some custom downstream application, maybe it made a plot in a slide deck, maybe it was used to do some kind of analysis, right? So multiple scientists download the same data over and over again. So the reusability of data, and that is something that it's a value prop of getting the data ready, structured, ready to use, right? That we see quite consistently, right? Does not quite answer your question of like, does it lead to more storage? But
No, it kind of takes me into a different route, which is, it sounds like you guys are prepping data to be used across multiple
yes,
clouds. A lot of companies are adopting this hybrid or multi-cloud, or even on-prem. You've got multiple on-prem environments you need to send data to. Has egress been a challenge for your business as you're prepping potentially these chunky data sets and allowing them to go from place to place?
yeah, we run into this often, very often, right? And like I'll give examples where, like, let's say customer is married to Google infrastructure, right? And a lot of data that we have, a lot of stack that we have built on historically has been on AWS. Today we support all the major cloud providers, but this customer is only on Google, right? So you have to, at some point, someone has to pay for the egress cost,
Yeah.
right? And the volumes are high, insane, right? Just this morning, I saw a Slack message which was about one data set from a customer, which was around half a terabyte. One data set. If you run a big model training exercise where you have cleaned up a huge corpus and you have to move it, it's a conversation to be had, right? Because no one wants to sign up for unanticipated cloud costs. To have a handle on that is quite important, right?
Yeah, and I mean, to just put some context around that, a gigabyte of data egress out of, Azure, GCP, AWS, depending on the tier you're in, it's 7 to 9 cents a gigabyte. So half a terabyte. And then let's say you're moving hundreds or thousands of data sets, monthly. Those prices can really cause both the customer or the vendor the pain, right?
Yeah, someone has to pay for it. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a big. So we have been very fiscally responsible. So our teams have been very careful with putting some notifications in place about cloud costs, compute costs, right, storage, egress. Now you also have to worry about LLM tokens, right? Like you want to. So you do want to not curb the creativity of scientists, right? You want to enable that, but you want to also put appropriate checks and balances in place, right? Egress is a thing that our engineering team comes up often to deal with. So we continuously look for solutions that are going to hopefully take care of that problem. That's an unsolved problem for us.
Yeah. Speaking about cloud costs and like the transition from SaaS to AI, are you guys now seeing that your use of GPU has risen? And do you see, if that is the case, that there is a roadmap where you'll continue to utilize more and more GPU?
So we have seen our compute cost go up, right? It is not entirely driven by GPU. So if I look at the percentage growth, GPU has grown, right? That's clear. But it's not like we're not building models from scratch, not today, right? And mostly because we are not convinced as to why we should, right? The day we will be convinced, we'll do that. Just like the AI, right? We took our own sweet time to build a conviction that, hey, look, this has value and this has a clear ROI for our customers, and let's get on it and let's have a very differentiated story here. We don't have that for building models from scratch yet, but our compute costs have been increasing steadily for over the years, and a couple of things that have helped us navigate that. One is GPUs. We spend more on that, and the other is also we have taken a pretty interesting. Our engineering team has innovated quite strongly there to use bare metal clusters, which is provided by many vendors, AWS included, to build a hybrid of cloud and bare metal clusters, because the kind of compute that you need to do to clean up data is can add up, right? And across all our customers, on a weekly basis, we process around 5 terabytes of data, including all our customers, all our modalities, and that adds up to a pretty penny. So anything that we can do to reduce the compute cost is of interest to us, but that also requires some innovation, some investment from our R&D team,
Yeah.
our AI labs team to do that, right? But we do that like continuously.
You have a solid point that almost requires an entire follow-up podcast around, is it worth building your own models today, or fine-tuning your own models today when ChatGPT is investing 500 billion in their own data center, and AWS and Oracle, et cetera, are investing such heavy sums where the models are rapidly improving, increasing in size, decreasing in size, right? Like, but one thing that I do see that Elucidata does help with, regardless of where you are in that equation, is they can create the data segments that you need to feed those foundation or frontier models, or feed your own training exercises.
Even for fine tuning, right? You need very high quality labeled data, right? And there's something that I'm writing about in the newsletter too. So happy to do a follow up podcast. But uh, to me, the evolution is quite dramatic and interesting. We had this era of pre LLM, right, where supervised learning models were the way to go, and you required a pretty high quality corpus of data to train, to test your models. And I think the baseline has been elevated by all these models that have come out from OpenAI, from DeepSeek, and they're apparently very resource intensive, right? But then there are also some pockets of very low cost models that have come out from China recently, or some open source tools models. I think we're yet to get a good handle on that as to what contributes to the cost and what does not. But cost aside, right, we have not been able to convince ourselves yet that a universal all-purpose foundation model in drug discovery is needed. Right? We don't think the state of the art is there yet, right? And what is that differential? What is that clear delta that you can achieve that you cannot achieve by fine tuning? Let's say pick up your favorite model, right? That business case has not been very clear to us yet, right? And other companies are on a different place in that spectrum, right? They're building foundation models, but to me, they're very narrowly focused. They're not as all-purpose as foundation models should be by design. So we are very much in the process of pressure testing our own thesis around that, right? Today it stands as like we don't have a very compelling reason to build a model from scratch.
Yeah, I agree. I know that your customer base is very lucky to have you focused, and you're a very focused entrepreneur, and you've really kind of helped this pharmaceutical industry take that next step into AI and automation. But if I'm part of another vertical, or I'm in, it sounds like hedge funds, or, you know, anything, are you ready or willing to take on use cases outside of pharmaceutical?
Yeah, very much so. That's not like the core focus, right? That's not what is we're discussing with our board or in budget, right? But yes, very clear yes. Because I think the core thesis is that these out of distribution problems, right? They are rare but very valuable. That's true for manufacturing, that's true for self-driving cars, that's true for hedge funds, right? We of course have to, do our own diligence and discovery to find what is our right to win. But the thesis is quite aligned, right? We also are not going to go into ads and which are where traditional approaches, right, where pattern matching works really well, right? That's not thesis, that's not our differentiation. Our differentiation is when your test data set is outside the distribution of your training data set, you're in trouble. How do you even know that, right? That's where we shine, right? That's where we have built the stack on, right? And I think you pointed out early on, right? Like we have sunk our teeth and we have learned our lessons in a very tough, highly regulated, high bar market. So we believe we have learned a lot that can be very valuable for, I don't know, semiconductor industry, for manufacturing industry, right? So we are very keen and willing to explore that as we speak. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're very excited to see how you guys continue to evolve and grow. And I think that you've chosen again a very high bar to start with in such a regulated and highly accurate requiredly accurate industry. And to end our session here with that question today. So Abhishek, it's been a tremendous time speaking with you, and you shared so much knowledge with the community. And we look forward to kind of having you guys on again, and learning how things change over time.
Thank you so much, John. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and our previous interactions have also been a lot of fun. I hope this is of relevance to your audience, and I would love to be back here again.
Wonderful.
Thanks, John.
Have a great day.
You too.